Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I am Nilesh Mandlecha. I am psychologist by profession and I have done my MBA in Human Resource Management. I conduct training programs for more than 75 companies. I conduct program for Indian Army, Indian Navy, Mumbai Police. I have conducted program on more than 10 TV channels. I am visiting faculty for management institutes. For last 16 years I am practicing as psychologist. Welcome for this very important talk on behavior therapy and learning theories. We will begin our talk today. We will see first one video. We will understand what is exactly the principle behind learning theories. Thorndike is a person, E.L. Thorndike, he introduced this learning concept first, then followed by Pavlov, Skinner, Watson, Bandura. We are going to talk about all these theories, and then after that we will talk about behavior therapy, some techniques of behavior therapy. While explaining theory also, we are going to talk some techniques about behavior therapy. So we will start our session today with one video.
Do you like ice cream? Hi, my name is Matt. This is Simply Psych. We all love ice cream. It's not cake, but it's pretty good. I'll do just about anything for ice cream. See, ice cream acts as a reward for us to behave certain ways. And it's a very key component to our understanding of learning and the concept of operant conditioning. Let's get into this. E.L. Thorndike was a psychologist in the 19th century. He coined the phrase the law of effect. What this states is that any behavior that is followed by favorable consequences is likely to happen again. And any behavior that is followed by unfavorable consequences is unlikely to happen again. What this means is that our behavior is shaped by either rewards or punishments. It's very much like a comedian telling jokes. How does a comedian know a joke will work? Because of the favorable response from the audience. My assistant Simmons volunteered to demonstrate this for us.
Hey there, how's everybody doing tonight? Alright, what do you call a fish with no eyes? Yeah. Alright, how about this one? Where does the president keep his armies? In his sleeveys.
Thank you, Simmons. Now, B.F. Skinner was another theorist, another psychologist that worked in the 20th century. He expanded on E.L. Thorndike's theory of the law of effect. He used a number of experiments to try to improve how rewards and punishments affect our behavior. He created a box. It's called an operant chamber, although most people just call it a Skinner box because they can't remember the words operant chamber. In this operant chamber, he would put a mouse. Now the goal is to teach the mouse to touch a lever in the box. So, in order to do that, he would use rewards. Now, for Skinner, rewards were actually called reinforcement. Reinforcement in this context always means to increase behavior. So, he reinforced the mouse touching the lever in the box by giving it food. Every time the mouse would touch the lever, food would come into the box, and the mouse would feast. So, as you might expect, the mouse would push the lever more often because of the food that would come into the box whenever he did. This is an example of positive reinforcement.
Guy walks into a dentist's office, says, Doc, you gotta help me, I think I'm off. I'm going crazy. Dentist says, why'd you come in here? I'm just a dentist. The guy says, well, your light was on.
Okay, Simmons. Well, just like a comedian, when he tells a joke, gets a laugh, but that laugh encourages him to tell more jokes. It acts as a positive reinforcer for his joke telling. So Skinner used his Skinner box to illustrate other kinds of reinforcement. The mouse who was in this box was pushing the lever in order to get its food. So Skinner thought to himself, how can I get the mouse to push the lever in another way. So what he did was he piped electricity into the box and electrocuted the mouse. The only time the electricity would stop is when the mouse would push the lever. So the mouse is being electrocuted, and then it pushes the lever, or sits on the lever, or touches the lever, and the electrocution stops. What do you think this mouse was doing? He was sitting on that lever to make sure the electrocution stopped.
What's Beethoven's favorite fruit? Banana. Banana.
All right, Sims. Now the two types of reinforcement that we're talking about are positive and negative reinforcement. Positive and negative don't mean what we typically think that they mean, good and bad. Positive reinforcement is when you add something favorable or pleasant to increase behavior. Negative reinforcement is the removal of something unpleasant in order to reinforce behavior.
Why did Sigmund Freud cross the road? Because his mother was there.
Seriously. An example of negative reinforcement in our own life is maybe when you were a kid and your mom asked you to clean your room. Of course, you probably didn't do it right away, but then she would ask you again and again and again and again. We call that nagging. So your mom would nag you until you cleaned your room. When would the nagging stop? When you cleaned your room. That's negative reinforcement. The nagging created an unpleasantness that was only removed once you performed the behavior your mother asked you to perform.
So 5 guys walk into a bar. The 6th one ducks.
All right, enough of the jokes. Finally, we come to punishment, something we're all too familiar with. Skinner decided to illustrate punishment in his Skinner box with a mouse that pushed the lever in order to get food. At this point, he didn't want the mouse to touch the lever, he wanted the mouse to stop touching the lever. So what he did was every time the mouse would push the lever, the mouse would receive a shock. Of course, this would cause the mouse to want to stop pushing the lever. This is what punishment is intended to do, to decrease behavior. Any behavior that is followed by unfavorable consequences is unlikely to happen again.
Why did the pirate go to the Caribbean? He wanted some R and R.
Really? That's enough.
Alright, how about this one? How many flies does it take to screw in a light bulb?
So as we've seen, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and punishment are all used to shape our behavior, and they're all part of operant conditioning. Let's take a seat. Skinner's experiments were extremely important to understanding learning, and over the years he created a lot of insane mice, which is a pretty ironic legacy for a psychologist. Until next time.
So we have seen one video and some background we tried to create what we are going to talk.
So while learning till date or whatever we have learned so far, so how we have learned and what are the things we have learned that could be a good learning, or there could be certain maladaptive things. Okay, so certain conditioning has happened. We have observed somebody, or probably we have seen somebody is doing that, and out of that we have learned many things. And while learning, these various theorists like Pavlov, Skinner, or maybe Bandura, what they have done it, if you are at all you are learning it, the things can be unlearned and change the behavior or modify the behavior. That is the goal, ultimate goal of this therapy, behavior therapy. So let us see one by one. Thorndike, we got a little bit and brief idea about it. Directly we'll move to Pavlov, behaviorist. He is one of the behaviorists, all psychologists, theorists, he has studied the behavior of the person, so he is known as behaviorist. He focused on observable behavior because behavior can be measured and thought cannot be. Unlike all theorists who study cognition, so they believe that thought is the component which need to be changed and automatically behavior will get changed. But in this particular behaviorist or theorist, they believe that observable behavior is something which one can measure, but change in the thoughts one cannot measure. Pavlov viewed individual differences in personality as the result of learning from the different environmental experiences. So like, depending upon the different environmental experiences, one can learn different learnings out of it. So for that, he has studied or he has made one very famous experiment known as Pavlov experiment, and he has performed on a simple operation on his dog. What he did with his dog? Here a rubber tube was inserted into a salivary gland. Okay, he had one dog and rubber tube was inserted so that one can measure the precise amount of saliva secreted during experiment. Now, any given point of when this salivation happens, when you see a food plate, that is a natural phenomenon. But what he did while doing this experiment, that he presented one neutral stimulus. That means he rang the bell. Now ringing of the bell is a neutral stimulus. It should not cause a salivation as such in a normal condition. But what he did, that along with this neutral stimulus of ringing of bell, he presented unconditional stimulus, that is meat pellets. Meat pellets is the food for the dog. So if it is something neutral stimulus and unconditional. Why we are saying unconditional stimulus? Because the moment it is being presented, you are going to get the natural phenomenon of salivation. So that's the reason it is unconditional. Without any condition, the moment I think of ice cream, I am going to feel like tempted to eat ice cream. So it's a natural. So unconditional stimulus is meat pellet which is being presented in front of dog, and this has been done repeatedly. So what happened? Ultimately association formed between ringing of bell and meat pellet. So the moment the bell is getting ring and meat pellet is being presented in front of the dog, the association, a strong association happens. बेल बज गया तो मुझे फूड मिलने वाला है, बेल बज गया तो मुझे फूड मिलने वाला है. Okay, so like that serves as a condition trial and successive rapid pairing. What happens that ultimately it forms the unconditional response with a bell as well. Okay, so this is nothing but a condition. Dog has got condition to a bell, dog along with the food pellet. So food becomes, before conditioning, food unconditional response lead to a salivation. Bell, it's a no response ideally speaking. Bell plus food, it gives a salivation, but after conditioning, bell plus salivation, bell gives the salivation alone. Yeah?
I'll give you practical example. Black and white children, they were playing. After some time, what happened when their parents observed? They were playing very nicely. Their parents told white children that black children are bad, you are not supposed to play with them, they are not good. So what happened? They started avoiding them. So initially they were playing, there was no conditioning. It was totally, but afterwards the conditioning has taken place. Similarly, the word Pakistan is presented to a small child, right? And when the child was growing, parents said Pakistan is a very bad country, Pakistan is our enemy, and so on and so forth. So after hearing the Pakistan again, the child started developing, child developed that prejudice. So this is how the conditioning happens, like all prejudices or many other things can be explained through this conditioning, Pavlov's conditioning.
So he has further also observed that unconditional response leads to salivation. This is the first order response and it's a natural phenomenon, involuntary phenomenon, which has been learned by. This is also learned behavior, but very at the early age and early stage, So that has been learned. But second, that like whatever we have conditioned with the bell ringing, that becomes the second order response. So when it gets associated with the primary reinforcer or primary unconditional stimulus, that also becomes the second order response. But if it is also associated with third stimulus, that also it said or it's been shown that it gets associated and can be conditioned. That means what he did, बेल रिंग किया, उसके बाद लाइट भी ऑन किया और फिर उसके बाद फूड presented to dog. So ultimately what happened, if because of this trial, several times of repetition, that along with the first order, second order, third order also got conditioned to the dog. So the moment if it is with the same sequence, suppose bell बज गई, उसके बाद light बज गई, तो like dog will start salivation. So that is the way it is. This is what it is known as first order response, second order response, and third order response. Okay. You have seen this. Now, principle of classical conditioning. How this happens and what are the principle of classical conditioning? This has been divided into acquisition. Pavlov divided into acquisition. Second is generalization and discrimination, and third is extinction and spontaneous recovery. What do you mean by that? Acquisition, something which is acquired learning, and it forms in, it has been divided into two that depend upon the number of pairings between conditional stimulus and unconditional stimulus. So acquisition takes place of these two stimulus, that is one which is unconditional stimulus. Unconditional stimulus is this food, and conditional stimulus which is a neutral stimulus initially, but that because of the pairing, because of the association, it becomes a conditioned stimulus. So whenever, if the frequency, the number of pairing between conditional stimulus and unconditional stimulus, if number of pairing is increasing, so strength of the response also will get increased. So the more the number of increase in the number of pairing, that will lead to the strengthen the increase in the strength of response. Here it is in this other way round, the interval between the presentation of conditional stimulus and unconditional stimulus. That means if the gap is as short as for 50 seconds, then the strength of the conditioned response will be much better. If it is more, it has been further seen कि अगर बहुत ज़्यादा भी गैप रहा फूड देने में और कंडीशन स्टिमुलस में, तो भी ये रिस्पॉन्स कंडीशन रिस्पॉन्स आ सकता है, सलाइवेशन आ सकता है. That has also been seen or studied further.
So in short, in one trial it will not happen. कि बेल बजा and then food दिया, उसको बार-बार देना पड़ेगा. Bell and then a food, bell then food, bell then food. Then that acquisition conditioning will happen. I think we have one video also on Pavlov.
Example of acquisition. Okay. Because you want me to show it now?
It's shaping. Is it like behaviorism?
Hello there. We make it everything we know.
Okay, no problem. We'll continue with the presentation.
So now another example of acquisition, if we see that rats are given a sweet tasty liquid to drink. Okay, so what happens, and along with that they are also injected with one drug which will cause that rat nauseating or like stomach upsetting. This was the experiment has been done to prove the acquisition, or it is the example of what happened. The rat found to acquire an aversion to the taste of liquid. Initially it was a sweet liquid. Liquid is sweet, but like what happened? The rat has been injected with a drug which will cause nauseating. Ultimately, because of this taste which has been learned कि मैंने पिया, however I drank that sweet liquid, पर उसके वजह से मुझे क्या हुआ? Nauseating हुआ, vomiting हुआ. So because of that, the rat found to acquire an aversion to the taste of liquid even when the interval between drinking and nausea was more than 1 hour. After 1 hour also the same thing has been repeated. But this time what happens? Like he remember and he show the aversion towards the sweet liquid. Okay. Example of acquisition, one more. Here it is a child while playing a new pet suddenly hears the loud sound of backfiring truck. Okay, he was playing with a new pet and suddenly hears a loud noise. And this noise is, if you see, it's a unconditional stimulus. Okay, it's a neutral stimulus. Yeah. Okay, but noise plus it got conditioned with the when the frequency got matched, whenever he is playing with the pet, and if he hears that loud noise, that got conditioned and that got associated several times, and he started getting a fear that the moment I play with this pet, I am getting that frightening or noise. So that because of that association, ultimately what happens? That child stopped playing with that new pet. Okay, so he started showing the aversion towards that pet. Another example over here that similarly sexual hang-up can also be explained through the process of classical conditioning. In this particular case, any sexually articles, if you look at on an average, so fine, those are neutral stimulus. But if man sees the nude body of the lover along with the such article, automatically, and if you get the repetitively, see sexual arousal conditioning response one can get to see. Martin Seligman noted that humans too learn. Now all these experiments more or less has been done on the animals. Okay, so Martin Seligman noted that humans also can learn strong aversion to the taste of foods which makes them sick many hours after they have eaten, or learned optimism and learned helplessness. Now I would like to share my own example, my own daughter's example in the morning when she was brushing her teeth in bathroom. So suddenly she said, "Undir." And I said, I ran, a rat, So I ran to bathroom. I said, what happened there? No, bathroom is smelling like as if there is a rat around. So this is the way it's got conditioned, and that remains. Once it has been conditioned, the same thing remains forever, and we carry that as our burden.
That becomes phobia.
And that becomes a phobia. Childhood, I must have got frightened because of the suppose if it is those Diwali crackers and all. Till date, I get scared if I see a 15 meter away from me that somebody is going to burn. Arey ruko pehle mere ko jaane do. So that fear is there, which has been conditioned, and that we keep on carrying it throughout life.
Because you saw your brother's hand.
Yeah, got burned, and because while playing in Diwali with the Diwali crackers.
This happens with fear most of the thing, or condition can happen with any condition?
Conditioning.
It is
But conditioning happens usually when, it's something related to fear, or it's
both
it could
fear
be
or failure.
See, suppose if it is at the time, at the early age, okay, if you hear a sound of bomb, okay, and because of that, fear, you have learned the fear factor. That's the time you got that feeling of fear. Now, if you see a Diwali cracker sound also, the again same thing it is. You associated the sound of bomb. probably during the bomb blast, those people who have heard the sound of the actual bombs forever also, they will like whatever the sound may because of the small, so they will show that fear because that has been conditioned.
When 1990 hit, when I was traveling by auto, तो ऑटो पलटी हो गया and मेरा पैर फ्रैक्चर हो गया. So after that, couple of months, what I have seen after that, अगर कोई ऑटो का बहुत स्पीड ज़्यादा बढ़ता है, so that the conditioning, if that the impact of that particular experience is very high magnitude, then that conditioning can take place in that particular event as well. One more example I can give. When my daughter initially, when she used to go to doctor, she was comfortable, but the day injection, now afterwards what happened, she associated doctor with injection. So this is what how the neutral stimulus, the doctor got the conditional stimulus. So there are so many examples. Many some people, what happens with them, they see the cow, they immediately get the fear. Right, they want to avoid, as if or dog, insects also, some lizard,
cockroaches,
so all these things can be explained very well through this Pavlov's theory. And we will talk, when therapeutic aspect will come, that time I will talk how to deal with it.
Just now I given the example, the acquisition of irrational fears or phobias. Bomb का sound सुना है, but later on, like if in any setup, that person is going to get that reaction of fear. Okay, so we have seen it. Another sexual arousal and hang-up example here it is. Unconditional stimulus is passionate kiss, and that should arouse the sexual arousal. But like if person feel or person get it, conditional stimulus of onion breath. Okay, that get associated. So whenever you see when that person feel or see or sense it, so that person is going to get that sexual arousal. So this is also a conditioning
or
part.
like it can be just
reverse way also.
Reverse way as well. That sex is bad. If that kind of a conditioning has happened, then that reaction will come.
And because of this, many sexual problems in sexual इसमें भी आ सकते हैं. And then like doctor use or therapists use that to desensitize and to reverse the condition.
30% marriages, they have bed-related problems, but people don't speak. I was teaching marriage counseling as a subject, so that is very important. But that is learned through conditioning. And then what happens once the conditioning has happened, then response, takes place. So that's it.
Yeah. So one example in the beginning itself, Nilesh has given about the word Pakistanis is a neutral stimulus for anybody.
Small child.
Okay, for a small child. But that more we give a background and we talk about, and then he learns that okay, fine, Pakistani means bad, all the people are criminals, all the people are terrorists, which is not the truth. But that gets conditioned the moment we hear about Pakistan.
It's like even people from Iraq or somewhere, even if they are there, their names are first scanned as a terrorist or something. Even if they are
Immediately
I am Marwadi. Immediately what happens? What gets So that's the conditioning, So that is how
social care.
But the lady in the hand, please count the fingers.
In all conclusion is in all cases stimuli initially incapable of eliciting any response. But strong reaction acquire this ability through repeated pairing with the unconditional stimuli. Okay, so this is the conclusion of Pavlov theory. Now coming to, just now we have covered acquisition and we have seen the n number of examples of acquisition. Now coming to the second principle of classical conditioning, generalization and discrimination. Generalization, once the organism is conditioned to one stimulus, एक बार एक बंदे का, वो पर्सन का कंडीशन हो गया या वो डॉग का कंडीशन हो गया, once it has been established, it is often found that it will respond to other stimuli similar in some dimension to it. कुछ ना कुछ तो वो fear या phobia दूसरे stimulus के पास भी उसी तरह से generalize हो जाएगा. This phenomenon is known as stimulus generalization. Stimulus generalization plays a very important adaptive role. Example of this generalization, you can see the sound made by angry bees, wasps and hornets are highly similar but certainly not identical. पर एक भी किसी insect के साथ अगर painful experience किसी का रहा, तो what is he going to do? It is going to generalize that fear, like precaution for the rest of the insect also. Okay, so that's what it means. एक जगह पे हमें अगर फोबिया हो गया, तो हमारा वो फोबिया दूसरे जगह पे भी वो सिमिलरली वो रिएक्शन देता है या फील होता है या इमर्ज होता है.
या किसी को प्यार में एक बार झटका लगा, 2 बार लगा, 3 बार लगा.
All are like that. All are like that.
Absolutely.
So that
I've
stimulus.
seen many women like throughout life they don't marry only saying that like सब मर्द ऐसे ही है बस. So that is example of generalization.
Or one more very famous experiment of little Albert is there in psychology. That little Albert was playing with some white object, like say white rabbit. Then again white bear, इसका सफेद दाढ़ी था उसके साथ. Then again white pillow. He was playing comfortably. But what happened? After some time, what psychologists did in this experiment, whenever he used to go to that near to that particular white object, they used to make a loud noise. Bang! So whenever you used to go to that particular near, so what happened? That particular they have taken initially only one object, that is say that pillow, rabbit or the pillow. So whenever you used to go near to that rabbit, they used to make a noise. So again they used to make a noise. So he developed the fear and he started avoiding. But then afterwards what happened? He started avoiding that pillow also, और वो सफेद दाढ़ी वाला आदमी जो था, he started avoiding that particular person. So this is how
So he conditioned that like जो भी white object
White,
है,
yeah,
उससे
generalized
डर के रहना चाहिए. Now, just now we have seen the generalization. Now we will see discrimination. That is, opposite of generalization is discrimination. Factors that affect conditioning. जो condition हो रहा है, उसको वो factors को affect करने वाला, that is nothing but discrimination. Now we have seen it in case of Pavla that जैसे bell ring होती है, food pellets मिलता है, salivation होता है. So there is a strong association between bell and salivation. Now suppose a same dog is presented with low pitch bell ringing. Now dog will discriminate. Oh, वैसा वाला नहीं है. So I need not to
worry.
I need not to think that I am going to get a food. So there won't be any salivation. So that is the discrimination. Able to discriminate, which is that conditioned stimulus because of what I am going to get food. Okay. So here it is able to discriminate. It is discrimination. Now, one famous experiment has been done over here where they condition same dog, okay, with 2 shapes. Famous experiment it was. क्या किया कि like whenever before presenting a food, before delivering a food to the dog, what they did, they showed one circle, okay, a shape of circle. So along with the shape of circle, dog got conditioned, I am going to get food. But they also conditioned the same dog with the eclipse. The moment you show a shape of eclipse, that means I am not going to get food. So these 2 different situations, dog got conditioned. But to make him conditioned, they had or they had to struggle a lot.
Right.
That means they had to do a step by step. ये शेप दिखाया, ये शेप पहले तो एक को एसोसिएट कर लिया, सर्कल को एसोसिएट कर लिया, सर्कल के बाद थोड़ा छोटा 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 करने लगे. But during this period, dog started showing a neurotic behavior. Confusion and more stress. But they did it simpler way, and the same step repeated several times to establish both these shapes. It happens. One can change the behavior or one can condition what we are expected from the animal.
But during these steps, food was given or not?
See,
Here the food was not given.
here food was not given.
In between, when another shape is shown to dog,
Another shape was shown to the dog. No, it was not given.
not given.
See,
Not
this
given.
is
So that's
similar. That they wanted to make the dog confused.
Confused, yeah.
This is it is like an oval shape.
Correct, correct.
So and they used to increase the size of this shape
Step by step.
step by step.
So to establish that, they need to reward that also.
That's what
Initially,
right.
initially, now I understood what you want to say. So initially, what they did, eclipse तक गया है ना, थोड़ा बड़ा shape हो गया है ना, इतना closer भी गया,
Okay.
तो भी I will reward. Okay.
I thought that the food quantity is reduced. Means earlier it is a bowl,
हाँ.
so
Probably
shape
they
change
must have done.
slight come.
Same ball has to be there. Food quantity cannot be there.
No, zero.
That is the reward.
At eclipse, he will get zero.
For the eclipse, he will get zero.
I think
Yeah,
that
food
but
quantity
yeah.
is nil. It is not gradually reducing those.
otherwise
He gets a
condition
full
will
or
not.
nil.
See, dog has learned to discriminate between these two stimulus. That's the most important point, right? This and this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Full or nil.
He was responding to this and not responding to this
I'll show you
because
one,
food was given to this particular stimulus and food was not given to this particular stimulus. They wanted to check, to make that confuse the dog. They were changing the shapes here, right? To make so dog started showing neurotic behavior. Dog got confused.
I'll show you one small video, okay, and then probably will come to know.
Depending on if you have time, otherwise.
About that, I went all up.
This one. You've seen it, right? We have shown
No, this is shaping. This
Okay.
is Skinner. This is Skinner. If you want, you can show the Pavlov. There are two videos. I want Pavlov classical conditioning.
this one.
Yeah. There is one more video is there. Classical conditioning. What is that? Yeah.
In this higher order animal, we aren't that much
Okay,
different.
fine, no problem. So Paulo rewarded every time, but in this video they just created a joke out of it.
Okay. So what they observed that, like, you know, before they could establish these two shapes and the desired behavior, you know, the dog was, like, you know, literally he was suffering from the experimental neurosis. Okay, and that is because of the confusion, that is because of the
different types of shapes.
correct, yeah. And they also observed that, like, the same experiment they did with the different dogs, and all dogs reacted differently based on their inhibitory and excitatory system with the nervous systems. Okay, their innate also it has been seen. While doing this experiment, dog was suffering from experimental, like just now showed, yeah. That is, this is attributed due to disturbance of the balance between excitatory and inhibitory process in the nervous system. Okay, now when we compare, now all the experiment has been done on animals, right? So the result of the animal experiment suggested that the ability of human being to discriminate between stimuli is impressive. बराबर animal से human being में discrimination is impressive. Animals are definitely they have a limitation, and when the environmental conditions require that these limits be exceeded, extreme stress may be induced. Okay, for both in both the cases, animals as well as Now coming to extinction and spontaneous recovery. Extinction, when a conditioned stimulus is repeatedly presented but is never followed by the unconditioned stimulus with which was formerly associated, its ability to elicit conditioned response gradually decreases and may fade completely, and this phenomenon is known as extinction.
So no food is given after the bell. Then after some time, dog stops salivating. And that is nothing but extinction.
Then it becomes unconditioned.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a neutral stimulus. No condition. Then, neutral stimulus. Spontaneous recovery, but if the same extinguished stimulus is then presented again at a later time, its capacity to evoke the response is found to reappear, and this phenomenon is termed as a spontaneous recovery.
Means it is there
It's
somewhere.
already there. So it rewarded again. It rewarded again. So it appears again.
Appears again. Very fast.
Very fast. And it takes a very, you are right, that like it takes a very
Because neural pathway is already created.
correct. Because this has been learned, and like for the first time for learning it will take time, but afterwards it does it very fast. It happens very fast.
And then it get again extinguished if the reward is not given.
Okay. So here it is. We can narrate in this picture that conditioning. Here comes my food. Condition हो गया, bell बज गया. Second it is extinction. To hell with your bell. कुछ मिल नहीं रहे, right? So extinction. Okay. So spontaneous recovery. Again मेरे को reward मिला है, तो spontaneous recovery. So extension of a conditioned response is important for the development of normal personality. If we lack some mechanism of getting rid of useless reactions to stimuli, which has a very minimal possibility of occurring, we would become a bundle of useless conditioned responses. So हमारे भी कुछ ना कुछ तो behavior ऐसे होते हैं which are maladaptive, like which need to get rid of and need to decondition them, otherwise it becomes a burden and हमारे awareness में भी नहीं आते. Now modification of behavior. Okay, now certain things have been happened, condition has been happened, maladaptive behavior we have acquired and learned. Now how we can modify those behavior and how one can use techniques, to modify our behavior. Principle of modification of behavior is useful in the treatment of neurosis, and it is also helpful in certain fears, to get rid of fears and phobias. One technique is flooding and second technique is systematic desensitization.
We will see that afterwards when we will talk about the techniques.
Yeah. But with the help of systematic desensitization, one can utilize in the examination to get rid of examination anxiety. Second, it is phobias, nightmares, depression, obsession, impotence, anorexia nervosa. All these things can be treated or can be modified. Okay, so we will see that later on. Just an example of systematic desensitization, or should we take it later on?
Later on.
Okay.
Or you can give it if you want.
Yeah. Fine. See, in both the cases, what happens? Bring person in actual contact with the feared object or situation. Yeah, if you have a fear or phobia or whatever it is, now you have to put that person in the battleground. अभी experience कर, but without much harming. नहीं तो उल्टा असर हो जाएगा. Okay, but उसमें भी steps है. Let's see the example of systematic desensitization and a person who is having a fear of heights. Okay, step 1. Teach that person a relaxation technique first and foremost. Relaxation technique, breathing and visualization. Okay, I am going on the height and I am not feeling a fear and I am relaxed. Okay, visualization and this visualization. Before actually doing that task, he has to visualize and feeling relaxed about it. That is the first step. Second step, write the word height and relax. किसी को तो वो word भी देखा तो भी that person will get scared. In my case, I used to get scared of lizard. I have a fear for it. But in childhood, I had such a bad fear about it. If anybody used to present me or show me a shape of a lizard also, I used to run like a mad. So that is a fear of phobia. So maybe for the person it is, one can do it in opposite. You write it down, see that written word and feel relaxed. Step by step. Third step, enter bottom floor of a tall building and relax. Next step, floor pe jao, ground floor pe jao, and then you get relaxed. Fourth, it is progress to a higher floor and relax. Fifth step is progress to an even higher floor and relax. So you expose a person to the feared object or feared situation, but that is also in stepwise or in stages.
I will talk, little add more here. In systematic desensitization, it has got some limitation. We can use same systematic desensitization, but adding Gestalt therapy into it. That will be really useful. How to do that? That I will talk. What Gestalt therapy, filtering pearls. He says that we get fragmented insight, and the main purpose of Gestalt is integration, integrating all the parts which are there in us. So here, in case of fear of heights, one part of mind is having fear, right? This part is having fear, and this part of mind doesn't want that fear. So there are two parts in the mind as per Gestalt. So what happens? There is a conflict between these two parts. This part which doesn't want this fear will tell, will think that जिसमें fear है इस ये negative है, and will try to get out that part. Will tell, no, I don't want you. Will hate that part, right? Will not accept that part. So the fragmentation will happen inside, right? So what is most important here is that how we can integrate them. Say for example, I will now talk about limitation of systematic desensitization, which can be overcome through this, and we can combine this both, right? How? Now here important is that this fear, existence of fear is there, and you are telling relax, relax, relax. So it will not go, it will remain there, right? So important is what? How to, first it's important to integrate both these forces. How we can integrate? By applying one important principle that is called positive intention principle. What is this positive intention principle? Both these parts have got positive intention. The part which has got fear is protecting you from danger, right? That's the positive intention. And this part which wants you to come out from your fear has got positive intention of wanting you to come out, right? So no part is enemy, right, inside us. But what happens? This part thinks this is enemy. But when we apply this positive intention principle, that time we tell our mind that in both the parts there is a positive intention. We separate intention and behavior. We tell ourselves that behavior is a problem, not the intention. That's very important to understand. We differentiate that behavior is a problem, not the intention. So what we do, we get in touch with this part which is having fear. Because we feel, how do we get in touch with that part? We feel some sensation related to that fear. If you ask that person, suppose if I bring lizard here, so person will start feeling sensation who have got some fear. So those sensation, wherever the person is feeling, either here or wherever, that is where the person is feeling that particular sensation. That is a part in, it can be anywhere in the body where the person feel sensation, right? So that is that part. So getting in touch with that particular part and telling that part, after closing the eyes, I know you have got positive intention. But all these years, I considered you as a negative thing. I tried to throw you out from my system because I considered and I used to think, get lost, I don't want you. And I criticized you, I blamed you. I'm really sorry for that. Today I have understood that you have got positive intention. Thank you for being in me. Thank you for keeping that positive intention for me.
This we have to do at that stage. Means suppose that lizard is there nearby.
No,
not there.
It's not there. The moment the person starts, see the gradual process. I will talk, say important thing is that particular object, say for example like this first step where height, after writing height, the person is getting the response, right? It's a gradual grades, there are grades, hierarchy is there. So I will give you two more example. One is of spider and another is of swimming immediately after this. But important is that height बोलते ही उसके दिमाग में कुछ fear create होता है, right? So immediately first important goal is what? कि वो जो part है जिसमें वो create हो रहा है sensation, हाँ, getting in touch with that particular sensation, giving all these messages. I know your positive intention. Thank you for being with me. I was criticizing you. I'm really sorry for that. I accept you the way you are. I love you the way you are. And I know I have not paid attention to you and your wants. I'm going to pay attention to your need and wants. I love you the way you are. And many times what happens after that, this part gets relaxed, right? And it starts getting integrated. Integration starts happening, assimilation, as per Gestalt. Then I ask the part, what do you want? Maybe there may be some need in that particular part, and I deal with that need. Once I deal with that need, I deal with the root. I will give you one more example. एक लड़की ऐसी थी, उसका यहाँ पर जो है सर दर्द होता था, 2 बार सिटी स्कैन किया, रिपोर्ट नॉर्मल, राइट। नाउ शी वांटेड टू गेट रीड ऑफ दैट। सो एक पार्ट में ये सेंसेशन है, सेंसेशन कौन सा है, हेडेक है। दूसरा पार्ट वांट्स टू गेट रीड ऑफ दैट, एंड हर बिलीफ वाज ये सेंसेशन इज अ नेगेटिव थिंग, but what I told her, both has got some positive intention. ये जो sensation है, the behavior is a problem, but it wants to communicate something to you which we want to understand what is that it wants to communicate, right? It has got positive intention. It is giving some indication, give attention to me, there is something wrong, right? So these both parts, like I have, and while doing this exercise, whatever part will come up, immediately you have to get in touch with that and give the same instruction. And then what happens, the person feels comfortable. Without, we don't have to go to the next stage. And whatever you are applying, important thing is that once the person feels comfortable with that particular part, then move on to the next step. Then when I asked her, what do you want? She said, that part said, I want rest.
This feeling will come.
Yeah, the feeling will come. Probably it may come or it may not come. So it came. Then I understood, she was stretching herself for 16 hours a day. So then I asked her that, then I dealt with that in a different manner. I told her to get in touch with your creative part and ask that part to generate as many as solution, to take rest. Then select 3 powerful, out of that, and then see in mind, I visualize solution number 1, you are practicing in 3 different situations, solution number 2 and 3, you are doing gradually, and then dealt with like that. Similarly, alcohol, one part is drinking alcohol, other part doesn't want that. So वो इसको जो blame करता है ना, तो intention को भी blame करता है. Many times, when I went to that intention, some people said, मुझे tension नहीं चाहिए इसके लिए. So then we can deal with constructive ways. So
acknowledging all both the
absolutely, and integrating them. Once you acknowledge and integrate, I have used this, widely used in my therapeutic practice, counseling, and I have found it very beneficial, very beneficial. एक जो है वो मतलब sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system जो है, जो relax करने वाला जो system है ना, that gets activated. Research में ये prove हो चुका है. This. So important is that. So once we are through with that, conditioning हो गया, correct? Because we are not in a hurry. We have assimilated, we have conditioned, we have made that part comfortable. Then gradually we have to move on to the second stage. Again, if that response is evoking, again we are not considering any of the part in the mind as our enemy. Then third and then fourth, like that. So I will show you those slides. Last. Yeah, I will show you immediately that some slides immediately here. Yes. See the gradual procedure for extinction, because see we want to extinct that response, right? That's our goal is, right? So moving through sequence of steps called hierarchy towards the object or situation that elicits the strongest conditional response. So how gradual means gradually, direct here, non-gradual, direct exposure. But usually I avoid this. I don't give direct exposure. I go example. If a child, can you read for me?
Yeah, if a child had a fear of water at the beach, a gradual approach would involve slowly approaching the water, perhaps first playing on the beach 20 feet away from the water, then playing 10.
So here in case at the time of playing 20 feet, वो आता है ऊपर fear to deal with this like this, not only with relaxation, I have my own strong conviction कि वो relaxation superficial level पे है, but unfortunately आज तक भी मतलब behaviorists they are still using only systematic desensitization और उसका जो result है, उसको जो success आने वाला है वो कम. But when you combine with that with the gestalt, then definitely
because slowly that realization comes.
Absolutely.
Inside, and that is important. No?
Acceptance comes.
Acceptance should be from the patient should accept it.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, therapist may say, "अरे कुछ नहीं होता है."
So important है कि वो 10 फुट 20 फुट के ऊपर भी है, but उसके अंदर क्या reality हो रही है, that is very important. Unless you teach that person to handle that internal reality, again and again the same thing will come up. So after that, then read after 20 feet.
Yeah. Then playing 10 feet away, then at the edge of the water, then putting feet in the water and so forth.
So forth. In non-gradual.
Alternative may be to put or carry the child into the water until the fear extinguishes.
Sometimes it will be devastating.
Absolutely. Sometimes because it may evoke strong conditional response.
Depending on the personality also.
Absolutely. So another example, yes.
Because earlier for swimming and all these things they used to throw in the well. That was the popular approach.
Absolutely.
Correct. And many of them, because of that, they develop fear for swimming forever.
Forever.
You know.
Similarly for driving, so many things, for the fear and the phobias. Flight में बैठने का होता है किसी को. So there are so many exams related है. So if you integrate, assimilate, the problem gets solved from the root.
Counter conditioning. Example: person with a fear of spiders are using relaxation would begin with items low on hierarchy, such as the word spider.
Spider, same.
Yeah. Walk up the hierarchy through intermediate items such as picture of a spider. Okay. Move on to items at the top of the hierarchy such as touching a live spider. Okay. If somebody takes this as a first step, as a studying thing, you will change the therapist only.
Or showing the spider in the bottle and giving the bottle in the hand.
Correct. That may be good actually because internally he knows that he will not come out.
But important, in the next slide.
Or dead animal.
Absolutely. So the important is what? Hierarchy have a sufficient number of items in our hierarchy. There should be sufficient immediately. Right. Then second, do not move through the hierarchy too fast. That is very important. Else things will not work. Let the child feels comfortable. Once the client understand how to make myself comfortable and assimilate that particular thing, how to accept, then what happens? For next level, he moves fast because that previous learning, how to get in touch with that sensation and how to deal with that, the client has learned. I have seen many of my clients. They were telling me, they were having some sensation and they were hating here, palpitation, like kind of a thing. When I taught them this kind of a technique, within 10 minutes they got some control over it. Here I tell them, no questioning, no telling get out, no telling why, not changing totally the perception about that particular thing. It's like आज तक जिसको दुश्मन समझ रहा है, I'm telling you it's your friend. But I'm telling also that we will deal with the problem of behavior differently. The sharab pina is the problem, but intention is not a problem. So, but वो जो blame करता है ना, तो it blames intention. So when it backs to internally and then अंदर फिर क्या होता है, fragmentation होता है.
Then otherwise the feeling of guilt will come.
Absolutely.
Because this is my weakness.
Absolutely. And then again you can link to cognitive as well. Unconditional self-acceptance को भी link कर सकते हैं. Yeah. So when the person feels again comfortable, so you can use combination, 3 combination: Gestalt, cognitive, and behaviorism. So that's how it can work better. Do not move through the hierarchy too fast. Third,
we can ensure that the incompatible response is dominant to the undesired.
This is very important.
Yes.
वो आपका जो conditioning है, वो जो response which you don't want, उसको वो dominate करना चाहिए. Dominate means does not mean hating or trying to throw out that particular part. So वो इतना strong होना चाहिए कि
internalizing, accepting,
Absolutely.
realizing it and practicing.
I have dealt with with this many cases. So now we will again move on to what we were talking. So we were at extinction, then spontaneous recovery, this, we were talking about this.
Yes,
Right?
it is exactly.
Shall we move on now? Because we have talked about, so we have talked, in between the main important principle of behavior therapy, some of the principles of behavior therapy, especially related to power.
See, there's one more example over here of counter conditioning. This also technique theorists used to get rid of certain addictions. Now addictions could be alcoholism, or addiction it could be a cigarette, chain smokers, addictive people. So in that case, what they do it, they give apomorphine, which is a drug. This particular drug causes a nauseating feeling and stomach upsetting to that person, addicted person. Along with this drug, they also have alcohol. They consume alcohol. They do not stop because it's an addiction, and it is, if you say that person don't drink, it is not going to come back to you again. Okay. So alcohol or nicotine, whoever is chain smokers for them, then in that case what happens ultimately? Now this is also not an overnight thing. This also required to do it again and again, the time period depending upon the response and everything. One fine day, these addictive people, they give up the addiction of either alcohol or nicotine. So this is a counter condition.
Nausea and because of stomach upset.
Sometimes I have heard they use something in the food.
Powder also.
Is it that?
Yeah, it is that. It's also like that. They give, but when the person is not non-cooperative in that case.
Yeah. So then that association will be there. I am taking alcohol and I am feeling nausea.
Nausea.
So the aversion therapy is there. Aversion.
But body-wise, it is okay. I mean, it is not.
That is being decided by the doctor.
By the doctor, because ultimately.
Because otherwise, some
So-
symptoms.
So they have to
Control.
control the dose and everything. Then depending upon the response.
So
And
many times you will find some boards, Santa Daru Soda.
Yeah, I have
We
seen.
cannot rely on them.
I have seen many boards. No Santa Daru Sodwa.
Without telling the
so and so
person.
number.
Yeah, but they are not doctors.
They are not doctors, right.
So important is that.
Probably they also might be using some aversion
They
techniques.
use
But
it.
because of that, it might impact their health.
Gets nauseated.
I know.
So they give up.
No, but it has to be monitored.
But it has to be monitored by a proper doctor.
Correct.
That's where it's something side effect or
Yeah,
reaction
yeah.
happens.
They don't know.
They don't know. That's the thing.
The doctor is the best person to evaluate the side effects versus the effects. Okay. And depending upon the proportion, they will choose the option. Now coming to Skinner. Okay, we are through with Pavlov conditioning so far, and the moment we say Pavlov, one can recall a dog and salivating dog. That's the way it is. Now coming to Skinner, and the moment we Skinner, one animal is also associated with it. So let's see which animal is that. We focused on the study of individual subject. In this particular thing, his focus is on the individual as a subject, and whereas other personality theorists attempted to understand personality by studying groups. तो इसका अलग था कि इंडिविजुअल पर्सन को ही हम लोग ऑब्जर्व करेंगे और स्टडी करेंगे, नॉट द ग्रुप. Skinner rejected certain aspects. Which are those certain aspects? Rationality and irrationality, homostasis and heterostasis is nothing to do with the development or behavior of the person. As per him, he rejected. अंदर बॉडी में आपका फ्लूइड मेंटेन हो रहा है, नहीं हो रहा है, होमोस्टेसिस है, बैलेंस नहीं है. जैसे कुछ many of the theories say that like if it is your glucose is high, if you have a diabetes, that is heterostasis, it is not imbalance, and you are going to be a depressed person, and personality will be a depressive. Like that, no association according to Skinner. internal sources of human behavior was not important for explaining the behavior of a person as per Skinner.
That's why it is called, as you know, earlier, now they don't call it black box therapy. What is black box therapy? They don't look into what is there inside. They only say we are bothered only behavior. They were believer that every behavior is learned. So if it is learned, then we will use some technique to unlearn it. We are not bothered about what is cognitive factor. We are not bothered. Now it is not. They have also acknowledged the importance of cognitive factors, but Skinner's, as far as Skinner is concerned, his assumption was that
studying personality means discover the relationship between the behavior of the person and its reinforcing consequences within his environment. Which are the consequences has happened, which has made to reinforce his behavior, So that's what he has studied as a subject or studied as a person. According to him, he has assumption that behavior is lawful. Lawful, it can be predicted and it can be controlled. If certain things if we can learn, certain things we can unlearn also, and it has certain law. According to him.
And one of his statement, if you remember, he said, "Give me a child, I will make him a
doctor, criminal."
That was his statement.
Yes. Give me a child, I will make a criminal, doctor, or any other person. So he was so sure about his theory. I will make the child.
Whatever the experience I will provide to the child, accordingly he will make. I will make that person.
So that was his.
Let us understand Skinner's theory using following terminology. Before we understand the Skinner's theory and learning, we need to understand these certain terminologies. That is operant behavior, schedule of reinforcement, aversive stimuli, secondary reinforcement, successive. We will see one by one. Coming to operant behavior. Now he has divided behavior into two parts. Okay, one it is, he calls it as a respondent behavior and another is operant behavior. What do you mean by respondent behavior? This respondent behavior is being produced or can be elicited by stimuli of environment. जो भी stimulus या stimuli मिल रहा है environment में, उससे ये automatically respond हो जाएगा behavior. And this behavior is involuntary and automatic within the environment. I am talking about respondent behavior. But in case of operant behavior, it is not involuntary. Okay, involuntary, that is not in your control. And voluntary, it can be controlled. It is well known and identified easily in case of respondent behavior, and it is difficult to identify किसके साथ voluntary होगा, किसके साथ condition होगा, we do not know. And example of this, person do not have any control on salivation, sweating, constriction of pupil. That's the reason they are involuntary, and these are the respondent behavior, example of respondent behavior. In case of operant behavior, behavior of the human being is predominantly operant in nature. Okay, so let's see. Example of respondent, that means food देखा, तो it is किसी के लिए भी salivation होना, it is natural. So this is the example of respondent behavior. And strength of operant behavior increases with reinforcers. Reinforcer meaning, a reinforcer is defined as anything that strengthens a tendency to behave in a particular way. Anything which will increase the behavior. That means rat pushes lever and he gets reward of food. So he is going to do what? He is going to push that bar or lever again and again and again and again whenever he wants that reward of food. So that is nothing but reinforcer. That means to have the operant behavior, something has to be there in between which will strengthen the behavior or the desired behavior. That's the reason the word operant. Example of reinforcer, food satisfies hunger. This is the natural thing. But if you want that dog to behave in a particular pattern, so using this natural respondent, one can train the animal. Okay. becomes a reinforcer for the dog to get that desired behavior. Example of reinforcer for us, money is the example of reinforcer, because money reinforces the likelihood that you will keep working for it. As such, there is no value for it or no meaning for money, but it is associated with it is paired with several other likelihood of our lifestyle. Examples of reinforcer again for a child point of view, child will behave well again and again to get mom and dad's approval. So reinforcer is positive and reinforcer is negative. Now when we say positive means not good and when we say negative means bad, it's not like that. In this particular case, it is positive means adding something pleasant so that we can enhance the behavior of that person.
Required reason.
Yes, desired behavior, required behavior. Removing something unpleasant. Negative means removing something unpleasant. Okay. Yeah, we have examples also, so that something is given which you want, giving serves as a reinforcement in case of a positive reinforcement. In this, something desirable is given after a behavior is performed. Kiya to are good, very good. It could be a verbal, it could be a physical. Arey main teko ice cream la ke dunga, main tujhe chocolate la ke dunga. That is the reward for to get that desired behavior. Now, negative reinforcement, something is taken away which you don't want, and taking away serves as reinforcement, negative reinforcement. In this, when something which is aversive or unwanted is removed after a behavior is performed. Okay. Example over here, car door not locked properly, then beep sound comes. कार का दरवाजा ठीक से दरवाजा बंद नहीं किया कि जोर से एक beep sound, which is the sound which you do not want. Okay. So you lock properly and beep will stop. This is a negative reinforcement.
Again, when you are driving और बारिश आ रहा है, तो immediately wiper start करते हैं. So that is the negative. And there is an example, positive. You study hard and you get ice cream from parents. You are positively reinforced that behavior. The most important, it should increase the likelihood that behavior happens more often. So that is reinforcer, either positive or negative. It should increase the likelihood of that particular behavior more often.
Positive, one more example. You are in a grocery shop with your child and child is misbehaving. You give lollipop to child and child stops misbehaving. Every time you give lollipop and child stops misbehaving. Okay. So this is something which is addition, so that you can get the desired behavior. In case of negative reinforcement, example, stimulus, removal or withheld. If you score good grade, then you get excuse from routine, boring or unpleasant work at home. तो मतलब आपको खेलने के लिए ज़्यादा टाइम मिलेगा, ये बोरिंग काम करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है.
The most important, stimulus presented. So addition. Here it is removed. That's the difference. Because many of his, behavioral therapy principles, techniques are based on this. So this is the foundation and the fundamental.
So we have already discussed key to understanding. Positive means it's not good, negative means it's not bad. Positive means you are adding a stimulus and negative means subtraction, you are removing the stimulus. Types of reinforcement. Again it is the same repetition. Okay. Same thing.
Punishment. Go back to the previous slide. Yes, this one.
Yeah, punishment.
Positive.
Yeah.
Positive punishment is when something aversive or undesired is given after a behavior is performed. It is positive punishment. It should decrease the occurrence of the behavior. Negative punishment is when something is desirable is removed after a behavior is performed. It should decrease the occurrence of the behavior. Now in case of a teacher, suppose teacher says to a student, if you do not do your homework, you have to do it 3 times. Put the same homework, you have to do it 3 times. Now this is what? This is something going to add. So adding a punishment which he doesn't want. So it is a positive punishment. Fine. Something is given which you don't want, giving serves as a punishment. In this, when something aversive or undesired is given after a behavior is performed. Example directly, as a punishment you have given a routine, boring or unpleasant work at home. You are positively punished and that behavior decreases. Okay. Then in case of negative, something is taken away which you want taking away serves as a punishment. In this, when something desirable is removed after behavior is performed, example, you will not see TV or will not get a video, you are negatively punished.
So there are some techniques in behavior therapy which you yourself can use. Say for example, you want to achieve some goal, so you can give negative punishment. As long as I reach there, I will abstain for this particular behavior or the task, and then it is likely.
That is why in many self-help books they say you do something, positively reward yourself for some time.
Yeah, so that's both. See, we have seen both positive
reinforcement and
negative
reinforcement, and positive punishment and negative
These
punishment.
are very core, most important principle of Skinner, and based on this, so many techniques have emerged.
Okay, one more positive punishment, child misbehaves and then gets spanking from parents. Okay, example for negative punishment, child misbehaves and then child is asked to clean garden or no TV for a week.
Simple. Similar, we have seen this here. So all positive reinforcement, then negative reinforcement, punishment positive, punishment negative. So
Get something you want, positive reinforcement. Escape or avoid something you don't want, negative reinforcement. Get something you don't want, that is a punishment but positive, and lose something that you have, that is penalty, that is negative punishment.
Not you can go in the video, it's not hyperlinked.
Bypass Publishing presents Psychology in the Fast Lane. Difficult topics explained. Negative reinforcement versus punishment. Many people confuse the terms negative reinforcement and punishment, thinking they mean the same thing, but they don't. Remember, reinforcers in general strengthen voluntary responses, and punishers weaken voluntary responses. So, growing up while I was in school, my mom could have punished me whenever I received bad grades in order to weaken whatever behavior was causing me to get bad grades. Or she could have reinforced my good behavior with something desirable whenever I did study or get good grades. Now, there are two types of each approach, positive and negative. Positive reinforcement is a process that strengthens the likelihood of a particular response by adding a stimulus after the behavior is performed. Negative reinforcement also strengthens the likelihood of a particular response, but by removing an undesirable consequence. So my mom could have told me that if I got good grades during the school year, then I wouldn't have to get a summer job, and that would be my reinforcer. Note that in both cases, the response of getting good grades is strengthened. We can punish a response by also adding or removing a stimulus. Like I could punish the bad behavior of a child by spanking its backside, or I could punish you after you speed by taking away your driver's license. Both of these things would act to suppress certain bad behaviors. So punishment is either adding or removing something that would stop a response from happening again. And reinforcement is adding or removing something that would encourage the response to happen again.
box experiment, which is very famous experiment, and with the help of, as I said, when we say Pavlov, you have to remember dog, and you have to say Skinner, you have to remember rats. Okay. So what this gentleman he had done, he kept one rat placed in a Skinner's box.
And we have also seen when the first video we have shown in that some part of the Skinner experiment.
Okay. So rat placed in a Skinner box, shaped to get closer and closer to the bar in order to receive food. Okay. Eventually required to press the bar to receive food, and food is reinforcer. I created a box. There's one lever. Okay. There's a food dispenser, and there's a pipe associated with this box. The moment he is going to, so as usual, what he did, a rat is a rat, and rat is moving around the cage doing what rat does normally. Idhar se udhar daud raha hai. So accidentally what he did, he presses the lever and food pellet falls into the cage. That's what. But here it is, one press, one food pellet. That was the ratio. So it was like a reinforce for him to do it again and again and gradually.
And one more, take similar experiment. What he did, he took two boxes, Skinner, and two rats. But एक रैट जो था वो बहुत ज़्यादा हंग्री था, मतलब उसे फूड ही नहीं दिया था काफ़ी समय से, और दूसरे रैट को फुल, मतलब जितना चाहिए उतना एकदम स्टमक फुल था. Now एक को एक को ये इधर छोड़ा, एक को इधर छोड़ा. Now what do you think? What could have क्या हुआ रहेगा? I am asking you, क्या हुआ रहेगा?
भूखा हुआ
तो वो ज़्यादा एक्टिव था. And yeah, so इसलिए कहते हैं ना कि आदमी को खाली पेट ज़्यादा सीखता है. So this is experimentally. You want to
Correct. And in fact, if you go on the YouTube, you'll find that through those videos. एक rat पूरा ऐसा बैठा है आराम से,
और वीडियो रहता है.
So the operant pressing the lever. So here it is. Lever becomes the operant because it is something which is need to operate externally. It is not a natural response. So the operant pressing the lever is the behavior just prior to the reinforce. Reinforce over here is food, which is the food pellet, of course, and no time at all the rat is furiously pedaling away at the lever and holding his pile of the pellets in the corner of cage. So एक कोने पे फटाफट उसने पेडलिंग चालू की और फूड पेलेट्स ले लेके उसने उसका हीप बना दिया.
अच्छा, not eaten.
It will eat in leisure. He's taking the rewards.
Yeah, he's taking the reward. When he's getting it, he's not stopping. He's active. He is to get more and more rewards.
Okay.
He has learned that. Like now, by pressing it, I'm going to get it. So, एक क्यों? Dusty, you know.
Like who moved my cheese?
उसमें क्या होता है कभी-कभी greed कभी-कभी इसी तरह से होता है. मिल रहा है one after the other, you know, and मुझे कबीर का दोहा याद आ गया.
That's what I was thinking. कबीर नहीं आया.
वो माखी बैठी शहद में, माखी यानी fly, शहद means honey. माखी बैठी शहद में, आगे है कि what is that?
माखी बैठी शहद में सो दे पंख चिपकाए.
सो रहे पंख चिपकाए, मतलब पंख चिपकाए. बाद में क्या है कि she wanted to fly, मतलब उड़ने को तो उसका ये उड़ने को सासे भई, कबीरा कहते हैं, मतलब उड़ने को सासे भई लालच बुरी बला है.
अभी उसको उड़ना चाहते हैं पर उसके पूरे जो पंख है उसमें हनी में डूब गए, चिपक गए, unable to do it. लालच बुरी बला है. इसका भी ऐसे ही हो गया.
इकट्ठा करेगा, but some people इतना इकट्ठा करते हैं लाइफ में कि they don't. So
वो समझ में नहीं आता कि जरूरत कितनी है, जरूरत के बाहर हम लोग कब गए.
Might get suffocated, drowned in that.
मेरी बच्ची का ही यहाँ पे एक एग्जाम्पल. I wanted to condition while learning. I thought, okay, let me condition her. You know, so she she has a tonsil problem, and last 3 years, like what we are doing it, the moment monsoon start, she falls sick, she gets a high fever, 101 plus and all, and we have to admit her. So this time I condition her कि whatever tonsil आएगा, enlarge होगा, so like let's not like we'll do some precautionary thing, gargle, hygiene, and let's not go to hospital. And by doing that, I am going to save 10,000 rupees. And if I save 10,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees will be yours. Now started greedy mind her. Okay,
2,000 rupees, any doll or any toy you will get from Hamlet.
So while brushing this, immediately when I presented this idea, while brushing, she started thinking, Mummy, 2001 का होगा तो देगी ना? So coming back to that, okay. So even he gathered all the food pellets, and behavior followed by reinforcing stimulus, resulting in an increased probability of that behavior occurring in the future. So what if you do not give the rat any more pellets? क्या होगा? So extinction. Okay. So after a few futile attempts, so कोशिश करेगा, okay, and he will stop that behavior. If the pellet machine is back on again, तो spontaneous recovery हो जाए. So let us understand. ये हमें इनके बारे में भी देखने को मिलता है. Those people who are alcoholic, मैं छोड़ूंगा, मैंने छोड़ दिया. Okay, 6 महीने छोड़ेंगे और कहीं opportunity मिल गई recovery and backlog भी clear.
Has to be away from
Yes.
So now coming to a schedule of reinforcement. Schedule of reinforcement. Continuous reinforcement दिया है. Every time you're reinforcing that rat, is going to repeatedly do the same behavior.
But here important thing is that after some time it will not act as a reinforcement.
Yes.
So then reward देते समय there has to be some schedule. So that's how this concept of schedule of reinforcement came.
Otherwise, importance will come.
Importance will come down, that's why the schedule. So yes, reinforce हो रहा है, but उसको वो अगर rewards तो feel होना चाहिए. Make that efforts. And then I will give you a couple of example. कौन बनेगा करोड़पति, salary और काफी सारे example है. Lottery का कौन सा schedule use किया जाता है, and how people respond to that. Yes.
Now coming to intermittent reinforcement schedule. Intermittent reinforcement schedule, एक तो fixed ratio होता है between behavior and reinforcer. And another thing is fixed interval, that is time device होता है. Okay. तो इसमें क्या किया इन्होंने? If the rat presses the lever 3 times, तो ही उसको food pellet मिलेगा. In other case, 5 बार प्रेस किया तो food pellet मिलेगा. 20 times किया तो food pellet मिलेगा. So rat got developed the rhythm, and one at a time. ये 3 time वाला, they repeatedly did it for maybe hour or a day or something like that. Next day they changed it to 5 times. Next day they changed it to 20 times. So that he got that I need to press more. अभी पहले जैसे रहा नहीं है कि एक बार दबाया कि food pellet हो गया. Okay? So he started permutation, combination and trial. 3 बार दबाया तो आया. Then उसका understanding हो गया कि ये
process उसका IQ बढ़ गया.
So this was fixed कि जितने इस पे मिलेगा. So you will see कौन बनेगा करोड़पति में. आपने देखा है कभी कौन बनेगा करोड़पति? उसमें पहला क्वेश्चन पे ये रिवॉर्ड, सेकंड पे ये रिवॉर्ड. So that is fixed. And then later on the punishment भी है. So it follows exactly ये स्किनर का जो principle है ना, reward and punishment, that's the principle is used there. और सैलरी जो होता है 30 दिन के बाद फिक्स होता है. Right. So that is one more example of fixed incentive.
6 monthly incentive रहता है, 12 monthly incentive रहता है,
जो
monthly
fixed है वो fixed है, right?
इतना करेगा तो इतना मिलेगा, इतना करेगा तो इतना.
Oh, and there are some variable, right? So this is it. This is in terms of behavior, number of time that is performing, that particular person is behaving, performing, and that is related to time. Here 20 सेकंड के बाद आएगा ही आएगा.
So like या 20 सेकंड में अगर एक बार भी पंच किया तो भी मुझे मिलेगा.
But you have to wait for
Yeah,
20 seconds.
for 20 seconds. Okay, अगर उसने 100 टाइम्स भी इस बीच में दौरान अगर उसने प्रेस किया तो he is not going to get it. Okay?
So the rat started anticipating कि कब होता है.
हाँ. पर एक strange behavior notice किया. Okay? At the time of like fixed interval time के यहाँ पे 20 seconds. What is that time? One strange. He didn't understand that if I punch it for 1 second also, one time also during this period, I am going to get it. But what he did, one strange thing that happens is that the rat tend to pace themselves. They slow down the rate of their behavior right after the reinforcer. He was putting efforts of pressing the bar, but वो ये क्या किया? Slow down किया effort. एक बार food pellet मिल गया, reinforcer हो गया. He slowed down his efforts and when he understood कि ये time gap का 20 सेकंड के बाद ऐसा कुछ मिल रहा है, उसके पहले क्या किया? जोर से मारना शुरू किया. Initial time में आराम से धीरे प्रेस करो और जैसे ही वो टाइम मिले तो maybe क्वार्टरली और 6 मंथली अगर एक क्वार्टर खत्म होता है, पहले 1-2 महीना रेगुलर का परफॉर्मेंस देने का, थर्ड क्वार्टर में थोड़ा ज्यादा
मंथ एंड सिंड्रोम.
Exactly.
We have done this.
Yeah.
Back.
Second, a variable ratio schedule.
Variable ratio between behavior and reinforcer keep changing x each time. If the rat presses the lever 3 times, then 10 times or 1 times and so on. So keep on changing it. And the variation
Variation. You see the lottery जो है ना, you don't know when the person will get reward. So in anticipation of the reward, person keeps on buying those lottery tickets. वो बीच में reward लग जाता है. Again वो reinforcer होता है. Again all kinds of gambling.
You get on certain number and when you wait, you don't get, you keep on
doing that particular behavior. And this is very most powerful reinforcement.
Yes. Otherwise, if you go to malls and you find that game zone. In that game zone, you keep on hitting or something, and you keep on getting those coupons. Okay. That it is, you never know when you will get that coupons and how many times you will get that coupon and how long that string will be. But that again and again, never know. But variable.
How people get addicted to casinos.
Yeah, it's a classic example of this. Variable, because of the variable.
Yeah, this also, playing card also. Because the schedule and what Skinner found, ये जो variable schedule है ना, reward करने का, is the most powerful schedule. So if you are dealing with your child, or don't tell all the time कि you are going to get this. Reward desirable in between. Spontaneous. So the child will keep on, like in her company, caught. We
had a certificate, certificate.
But she was not aware when she is going to get.
So it is like a person will keep on doing it or keep on contributing his best or her best throughout, because you never know where you are going to get rewarded.
It's like a surprise.
Yeah, it's a surprise.
So HR used to come now, we caught you, while doing exceptional customer service at this particular time.
Take certificate, small amount, token amount. So that's
you are always on the toes to get that particular thing. So it is used, it is very useful.
And it is useful. The variable ratio is useful to motivate so that he can put his efforts or her efforts throughout.
Yeah. So without telling you reward, so the child will anticipate when I am going to get.
Correct. Otherwise monthly, quarterly मिलने वाला है तो 2 महीना चुपचाप बैठो, तीसरे महीने में efforts लगाओ. The variable interval, and it happens in the corporate.
Yeah, it happens. Here and sometimes they call it and have a coffee with chairman.
इसके वजह से 12 महीने के बाद परफॉर्मेंस के बाद जो नया साल चालू होता है उसका पहला मंथ जो होता है वहाँ पे परफॉर्मेंस नीचे जाएगा, ये एंटिसिपेट किया होता है क्योंकि उसके पहले के ऑर्डर्स लिए होते हैं.
And secondly, that is in terms of time. This is in terms of number of behavior, and that is in terms of time. So that
keep
was,
changing the time period. For 20 seconds, 5 seconds, कभी होगा, never know.
but also rat is more active, you know, for variable.
Yes.
For variable, fixed इसमें वो पता चल जाता है ना, अभी थोड़ी देर के बाद आने वाला है तो रेस्ट लेता है. But here, in anticipation of reward, he keeps on pressing the reward.
And yes, here it is said found these schedules are very resistant to extinction. ये खत्म ही नहीं होता है. He will keep on trying because rat could not set a rhythm between behavior and reward.
That's why महाभारत हुआ ना, इसकी वजह से वो पत्नी को भी दाव पे लगा दिया था. Because it's very मतलब वो पत्नी को भी दाव पे लगा रहा because वो in anticipation of reward. Extinction possible.
ये कर दूँगा, ये गेम खेल दूँगा.
And that was the temptation also ना. इसमें जीत गया तो everything
आ जाएगा
वापस everything you will get.
हाँ, everything I will get. That temptation was there. That pellet आएगा. Or language. So and again that time hijack भी हो जाता है, emotional mind hijack और capacity to think logically at that time. In case of human being. Yes, we already spoke.
Yes, we have discussed.
See, this is, you know, ये fixed है, fixed interval, variable interval, fixed ratio, variable ratio. So this is most powerful. Variable, you know, variable ratio is most powerful after those both.
Let us understand Skinner's theory. Now it is aversive stimuli. Third is aversive stimuli. ये दो हम लोग ने देख लिए. Aversive stimuli, that is it is opposite of reinforcing stimulus, and aversive stimulus might make you feel unpleasant or painful, so you will avoid doing that again and again. So this is known as aversive therapy or aversive conditioning. Now here it is the subject is exposed simultaneously undesired stimulus or behavior which has been learned by him. This is undesired stimulus, okay, which has been maladaptive behavior which is already he learned, plus expose him or her simultaneously with aversive stimuli which will cause a discomfort to him. Now this will form a association or conditioning, and thus the subject starts linking the association of both the stimulus causes discomfort, thus one can change the undesired behavior. So ultimately इसके वजह से मुझे ये हुआ है. So you will change the undesired behavior.
Example.
That means we can conclude any undesired behavior followed by an aversive stimulus, that is punishment conditioning, result into decreased probability of the behavior occurring in the future. Okay. In case of children, अगर बहुत कोई मस्ती कर रहा है तो टीचर क्या करेगी? बाहर जाओ और खड़े रहो. So that's the way you can reduce the probability of misbehaving in class.
बच्चे तो
मुंह में डालते हैं. They put coating, kadwa coating, yeah, bitter coating they put. Yes, this is also aversive stimulus. It's an example of this. So if you shock a rat for making a response, the rat will stop to make that response. Okay. So what he did? यहाँ पे liver पे जैसे ही वो press करता है तो वहाँ पे shock दिया गया. We have seen it in the first video. If you spank the baby for throwing his toys, he will throw his toys less and less maybe. Okay. Aversive conditioning, we have seen it. We have seen this.
Yes.
Okay. Nauseating. Okay. In case of smokers, put cigarette in mouth and the pleasurable stimulation when he smokes, like धीरे-धीरे smoke कर रहा है तो he gets that pleasure out of it. But if you make that person to smoke rapidly, so you will feel that nauseating feeling, and that's the way one can reduce that, like, you know, desire of smoking. Now coming to a secondary reinforcement, a neutral stimulus presented at the time of delivering the response also tends to acquire the reinforcing ability. Neutral stimulus and response, ये हम लोग ने देखा है, we have seen it. For example, in the Skinner's box at the time of delivering reinforcement, a sound of click used to come. Okay, so what happened? The moment he is pressing the bar, along with the bar, one more reinforcer was
Click.
click. One more stimulus was click, and after that food. So ultimately what happens? अगर बार भी नहीं बजा अगर in case और click भी बजा, and getting them to he associate with that click also. That becomes his second one. Secondary reinforcer.
Money is what? Secondary reinforcer. Food is a primary reinforcer. Money is a secondary reinforcer, and that motivates human being.
Skinners believe that the conditioned or secondary reinforcers are of great importance in controlling human behavior. Yeah? Which is one example is of money. Our every action is not maintained by the presentation of unconditioned or primary reinforcers such as food, water and sex. These are the primary reinforcers. पर इससे ही सारा कुछ अपना लाइफ नहीं ये हो सकता है. तो what is that motivates us is secondary reinforcement motivates us, or like controls our behavior.
Toy is very good. Rewards. So
here money has no intrinsic value of its own, but pair with a number of different unconditional response reinforcement, and ultimately it accounts for the social behavior.
tomorrow अगर पता चल गया कि मनी का वैल्यू कागज हो गया तो बड़ी
Successive approximation or shaping. Shaping is the operant condition procedure in which reinforcers guide behavior towards the desired target behavior through successive approximations. Okay, so successively he keeps on doing certain things with the help of rewards so that one can get the desired behavior. Okay, so we'll understand this with the help of example. Shaping and chaining. इसमें है ना?
Shall we show the video first?
ये करके फिर भी कर देंगे.
This is the most important for human behavior. You know, how this is how we can shape the child or any animal.
So, shaping means desired behavior reinforcement, increasingly stringent criteria. Say, initially I want to make anybody to understand this, which is stringent criteria. But before I make that person understand how you are supposed to behave, I will go with the simplified version. I'll reward that person till he reaches to the tougher and tougher going through.
First you show the video, it will be easy to explain.
Okay.
First you show the video, and then you come back on this slide.
Initially being lenient and then being very strict.
Sorry?
Initially being lenient and then being strict.
It's not the lenient, if you are closer to it, then also you are rewarding. That means making him to do the simplified thing first. Okay, suppose if you want to do this thing, cartwheel, if you want to do it, okay, so maybe we can
First
show
we will show the video and
then it will be better. Alright.
it will be very easy to understand what is exactly shaping is.
Shaping by successive approximation, the dog learns to fetch that. Okay, so goal is the slipper must hold in mouth until I grasp it. The dog is supposed to hold slipper in his mouth.
Hours? Now is rewarding. So even when the dog is touching to that slipper.
Only touching. He is close to it. But ultimate goal is he wants him to hold the slipper.
Now he's touching.
Now you give me. Now actually he is holding.
He is lifting now. So whenever he is holding and little touching, he is getting the reward.
Now it is not touching, it has to be lifting and holding.
Yes. Lifting is important. Initially the touching, that shape.
No.
Then the click, you know. He has to hold it in more for a second.
No longer period is started already. It's lifting now.
Holding it for long.
Yeah. Now see, until I grasp was the goal of his, but how he reached that goal? Slowly and gradually.
So shaping, he shaped that particular behavior. Now you can show that the thing what you were showing. Now it will be easy for you to understand.
It's
This
like in dog training and all these things. They
See, in
do,
circus also,
circus
all
also.
animal trainings, Skinner principles are used. You will find in the circus also they give some pellets when the dog is jumping or animal. All we wonder how these animals are trained.
But if you notice them, slowly, simultaneously, they keep on giving some pellets to the
them.
animals. So that's
that's a
rewarding.
reward. That if you perform this, you will get reward.
So it is desired behavioral reinforcement, increasingly stringent criteria, tougher type criteria, but first and foremost, slowly and gradually, a smaller or closer criteria also is doing it, is getting rewarded.
Yeah, see, this initially, after touching that particular thing, sleeper, then slowly lifting, then slowly holding, and then give it to me. So it is like that.
Chaining successive approximation, complex behavior decompose and mastering each component. That means you are supposed to reach it at 4. That is, you are supposed to hold in your mouth till I grasp from you. So before it is, if it is touching to that slipper also, is been rewarded. Okay. Second, it is now when it is touched and it is pushed towards him, rewarded. Okay. Somewhere he has touched his mouth, rewarded. And fourth, it is gradually it is been. So mastering each component.
Child learns to write. How they write, how they learn to write. First standing line, skipping line, then shape. So every time
Slowly.
the teacher gives them star. Or if you reward, the child will learn faster. If you understand shaping, then you can shape the
So
child.
in fact, they understand very well that importance of the scheduling of rewards. That's the reason in parent and teacher meeting, they specifically say, please do not demand or do not ask for the मेरे बच्चे को star क्यों नहीं दिया. We understand when to schedule a star for your kid. कभी ना कभी तो मिलेगा. They have to say this.
कुछ बच्चे मैंने देखा है, हाँ खुद ही स्टार बना के लेके आते हैं. That's
पेरेंट्स से भी ये चाहिए.
even your gymnastics training that is being used initially. समझो किसी को cartwheel करना है तो they just stand like this. Once that is mastered, then the next, then the appreciation. But if it is used with the proper reward by the trainer, any trainer, then the person who is learning under that particular trainer will learn those things faster. Either it is dance or any skill, as a matter of fact. If the trainer is aware of this Skinner's principle while teaching swimming,
So guitar is considered to be it's very difficult and tedious thing. But if the trainer or the musician knows how to train a person, it becomes simpler and the adaptation becomes easier.
So that is what. That's what it's very large application है. Driving as well.
Yes.
So if the driving instructor is aware about this shaping, then this can be learned a bit faster and in a proper manner.
In fact, I saw one video on the YouTube that like one lady wanted to learn driving, and she took the help of husband, and the husband was like, the moment she used to do a mistake, he used to yell a lot. And because of that, it happened that like she felt the aversion towards that driving, and till date she has not learned. So it is important, if your child is not learning, what is the approach and what is the method, need to check.
So that's why he was confident, I can make any child doctor or scientist or criminal.
Now coming to a superstitious behavior, how do we form the superstitious behavior, or from where and how we learn that?
I think video, yeah, we will show that video first, yes, and then
Okay.
first we will see the video. It gets reinforced. It gets reinforced, the superstitious behavior, and the person starts believing it's because of that only it is happening.
Okay.
से किसी को जॉब लगा, मतलब अंगूठी पहना और जॉब लगा, the person start believing कि अंगूठी से ही लगा. The person will not check the counter.
Michael Brick here, your host of the site file. Put the ball in the basket. Good bird. Those people who weren't so crazy about Skinner's philosophies that our behavior is all the result of reinforcement challenged him.
It's not coming.
Yeah.
I've not chosen a wrong video, that's why.
No, it's not coming.
Then the final everything.
Because every time I used to now this is also condition. Every time I used to open the video, he used to object. Now when I started, but I felt again he's objecting, but I selected the right video.
Michael Brick here, your host of the site file.
I'm coming to the main part of it. I'm skipping the.
Good bird. That our behavior is so crazy about. Good
After
bird.
this, I want to use
Those people who weren't so
the
crazy about Skinner's philosophy that our behavior is all the result of reinforcement challenged him by saying, how about something like superstitions? How do you explain that? Isn't that uniquely human? Well, Skinner set up an experiment to show that it was not and that it could be learned. So he put pigeons in a Skinner box, and instead of rewarding them for a behavior like pressing a bar, he just rewarded them. After 15 seconds or so, they just got a reward. And what he found out was these birds adopted the unusual behaviors. Some of them were twirling around in circles. Others were pecking in the corner. Why? Because that's what they were doing at the time the reward came to them. Okay, now I promise to relate this to your...
So,
That means what has happened over here? Here the condition was not to press the lever. They were rewarded, pigeons were rewarded without any putting condition of pressing the bar. But what happened after 15 seconds, they started getting reward. But what they adopted themselves, probably I turned around and because of that I got food pellet. So they started doing that strange behavior. They kept on doing it. And then some pigeons, what they did it, when I received a food pellet, that time what was I doing that time? I was faking in the corner. So let me do that action repeatedly. So जिसका संबंध जिसके साथ नहीं था, उसके साथ उन्होंने association किया, and that's the way he explained superstitious behavior of human being. Okay?
I have seen, one person, अभी he was thinking कि मैं जो चाहता था वही भगवान ने किया. अभी उस मंदिर में 7 दिन 7 कलर का अलग अलग ड्रेस पहनाया जाता था. सो उसने क्या सोचा, पहले दिन अपने माइंड में सोचा कि कल ये ड्रेस रहेगा, एंड दूसरे दिन वही ड्रेस. सो ही उसको लगा कि अब मुझे वो साक्षात्कार तो क्या है.
या मेरे भगवान ने सुन ली.
There was a possibility ना. Coincidence. 7 ड्रेसेस है तो हर एक का परसेंटेज है.
अभी इनफैक्ट मैंने जब जॉब में लगी थी नई तो माय बॉस एंड एवरीबॉडी वी वेंट टू शिरडी एंड माय बॉस ही न्यू दैट लाइक आई लाइक पिंक कलर करके, एंड देन he said, and eventually what happens, कि साईं बाबा के ऊपर पिंक कलर का ही ड्रेस चढ़ाया था। तो he said, प्रज्ञा आज तेरे को जो मांगना है मांग ले, तेरी मनोकामना पूरी होने वाली है।
So मराठी में कहते हैं ना कावड़ा बसला आणि खाटी, so crow is sitting and so that's how so many superstitious behavior people develop and they get exploited.
In fact, if we get chance, we can speak on this one aspect itself for one day. We have so many examples in India, or maybe in the world also. Maybe.
Yes.
So it is a type of conditioning in which there is no causal relationship between the response and the reinforcer.
30 number, there is no. You have cat is now you can show that what.
So reinforcer, no causal relationship between the response. We have seen it. So this happens only purely on the chance factor. Okay. So example over here, tribal people perform rain dance to get rain. So they believe, they think हम लोग ने डांस किया है इसलिए बारिश होने वाली है. A cat crossing your way, and if you have that fear कि आज कुछ गड़बड़ हो गई है, and because of the fear, any day, every day, some or the other, गड़बड़ is going to happen. But on that specifically day, he will remember वो cat गई थी और वो भी काली थी और उसने ऐसा किया.
And he will tell to somebody else and then
I further to it, then it gets more quiet. Sometimes the cat goes and instead of bad thing happens, good thing happens. Yes, sir. राइट से लेफ्ट गया तो अच्छा होगा, लेफ्ट से राइट
probably वो अच्छा क्यों हो गया मालूम है? मैं 5 स्टेप पीछे गया immediately.
They want to justify their own.
All habit logics they start applying to their situations.
एक जैसे ये मंत्र जो होता है, एक क्या हुआ कि पुराने जमाने में सपोज गुफाओं में रह रहा है आदमी, नॉट अवेयर, और ऊपर से हेलिंग शुरू हुआ तो बड़ा गिर रहा है, तो समझो कोई गिर गया, तो अभी गिरने के बाद अगर किसी को अरे क्या करने का है, अभी गिरने के बाद थोड़ा तो अनकॉन्शियस या कुछ होता है, अगर उसे बोला उठ, तो समझो उड़ गया रहेगा, तो उनको क्या समझ में आया, अरे ये उठ बिच्छू भगाने का मंत्र है, ये सब ऐसा ही है.
एप्लीकेशन का स्कोप बहुत बड़ा है.
Skinner theory, tremendous.
Abnormal behavior. Okay, abnormal behavior. Your goal is to replace the abnormal behavior with a normal behavior. The undesirable behavior can be modified by the manipulation of the environment by using operant and respondent condition. You make changes in the operant condition and you can manipulate your behavior or you can control that behavior. जैसे रैट के केस में उसको शॉक दिया, लीवर तो एस्टैब्लिश किया था, दबाने के बाद फूड मिलेगा, पर अभी मैंने इलेक्ट्रिसिटी उसमें डाल दिया, जैसे ही उसको प्रेस कर रहा है, I want him not to touch the lever, तो वो behavior manipulate हो गया. So technique 1, abnormal behavior, removing reinforcer, देना ही बंद किया, फूड पहले देने ही बंद किया, तो क्या होगा कि उसका behavior desired behavior है, वो automatically बंद हो जाएगा. And for doing that again you can reinforce probably.
तो ऐसा एक चाइल्ड के अगर गलत बिहेवियर को रिवॉर्ड कर रहे हैं पेरेंट्स, so then it can मतलब ट्रेमेंडस एप्लीकेशन है इसका, जो है ना बच्चों को पढ़ा करते समय
पढ़ाई नहीं कर रहा है तो चलो टीवी में दिखाऊंगी नहीं, ओके, so removing reinforcer, so change his behavior, after changing his behavior पढ़ने लगा, you give him reinforcer again, positive reinforcer. Technique 1. This has been useful in various psychological problems, addiction में, neurosis में, schizophrenia में, shyness में.
In some areas, not to change the chemical.
Token economy. This technique is used primarily in institutes such as psychiatric hospitals, juvenile halls and prisons. Certain rules are made explicit in the institution and behaving appropriately is rewarded with tokens including poker chips, tickets, funny money, recorded notes, etc. And the token can be traded in for desired things.
Yeah. I have used this technique with my daughter when she was very small. Now she is 9 years old. When she was bedwetting, she started bedwetting. So what I told her, I brought some stickers which she liked, and I told her, the day you will not bedwet, we will put this sticker on bathroom door. The day they will not. And
He will give you, she has to put it.
she has to put it. She can choose the sticker, whatever she wants. And after say, 20 sticker, you will get a toy up to 500 rupees or 1000 rupees as per your choice. So what started happening, initially the sticker ka tha, so in anticipation to get that reward, she started, रात में सोने के पहले going to the bathroom. Her bedwetting completely stopped. So
This we have seen it by ourselves, like changes in our behavior. And I have seen one, a person in a close relation. It standard तक उसका ये problem था. तो बाद में वो हो गया, but probably ऐसे कुछ techniques use करने से there could be a chances अगर problem नहीं हो तो.
So this token economy is very important and useful. It's again token economy. That's it. Now shall we continue? Social learning theory. This is very important again. Learning by observation. Again, this is from Bandura. Albert Bandura. Just like we have seen Pavlov, we have seen Skinner, and this is third theory, that is social cognitive learning theory. This is, earlier it was social cognitive theory. Earlier they used to call it as a social learning theory. Now it is social cognitive. They have included cognitive aspect as well. Learning by watching and observation. We don't only learn through conditioning, but we learn by watching and observation. People learn by observing others, a process known as vicarious learning. I am going to talk learning through interaction with environment. Social cognitive theory explains a continuous reciprocal interaction between cognitive, behavioral and environmental determinants. Modeling. So again, we learn more from person with whom we identify. Modeling, learning by observation, people with whom we learn more from person when we perceive commonalities and emotional attachment. So we learn more from that particular person, commonalities and emotional attachment. Now what are the principles of observation learning? Now this slide will explain how observation learning theory, also cognitive, social cognitive learning theory is different from Pavlov and Skinner. You will understand its independent existence apart from these two. This slide will explain. Cognitive, can you read cognitive?
Cognitive factors are central to human learning, as per him. Learning can occur in absence of reinforcement.
Yeah. So earlier what we have seen in both, reinforcement is necessary, but he is telling that without reinforcement also person can learn.
Learning can occur simply through observation of model and absence of reinforcement.
Yeah.
Learning can occur outside the boundaries of pleasure and pain.
Not that punishment and reward. So only by observation you can learn.
Laws of reinforcement and punishment are more relevant to performance than to acquisition.
That's what is theory. The study of aggression. Now I will show you the film only. Yes, show the video. Yeah. This is performed by Bandura, Albert Bandura. How the aggression, children can acquire the aggression. Bandura and social learning. Yes.
Initial research and observation. My initial research and observational learning centered on the social modeling of aggression. In our experiment, preschool children observed an adult model beat up an inflated Boba doll in novel ways. She pummeled it with a mallet, flung it in the air, kicked it repeatedly, and threw it down and beat it. And these novel acts were embellished with hostile remarks. The children were then left in the playroom that had a variety of toys. Now, the children who had observed the aggressive modeling adopted much of it. They even invented new ways for attacking the doll. Children who had not observed the adult model were less aggressive and never hit the Boba doll in the novel ways that were modeled.
He's Bandura.
The children who had been exposed to the aggressive modeling showed an increased attraction to guns, even though the adult model never used them. At the time we did this research, it was widely believed that seeing others venting aggression would drain away the viewer's aggressive drive. As you can see, exposure to modeled aggression is hardly cathartic. Televised violence has four major effects.
It increases.
It teaches aggressive styles of behavior, weakens restraint.
So now this is clear that it can enhance the aggression, and you can see now TV के ऊपर कितना murder दिखाया जाता है. तो वो sensitivity जो है ना वो action कम हो जाती है. So this is very clear. Not only they have invented new ways of aggression. So this clearly indicates कि impact होता है observation का. मतलब so this is the experiment, and then what they have done.
Yeah, experiment on live clown. Now after going on a toy clown, they did the same experiment they did on a live clown. Bandura even did a film of the young woman beating up a live clown, and the children went into that room in which live clown was there, and they proceeded to punch him, kick him, hit him with a little hammer, and so on.
So it had that much effect even on kids.
Yes. So live also, steps involved in the modeling process. Attentional process. If model is interesting and attractive, then it increases observation learning and vice versa. If it is attractive,
अमिताभ बच्चन अगर कुछ बोल रहा है, माधुरी दीक्षित बोल रही है, तो उसका impact तो होना ही है.
सचिन बोला पेप्सी पियो पीते हैं, so इसलिए उसको 6-6 करोड़ रुपया मिलता है ना, 5-5 रुपया.
और अगर बाबा हमसे बोल रहे हैं कि कुछ करना है, ये करना है, लाइवलीनेस करना है, तो उसका इतना novel aspect of model. If model is colorful and dramatic, prestigious, or appears to be particularly competent, we will pay more attention to it. If you are sleepy, sick, nervous, or hyper, you will learn less, and vice versa. तो रिटेंशन प्रोसेस हमें रिटेन कैसे होता है? अटेंशन का तो देखा कि कैसे हमारा बिहेवियर अटेंशन की वजह से बढ़ सकता है. रिटेंशन, एबिलिटी टू स्टोर एंड पुल इंफॉर्मेशन लेटर एंड एक्ट ऑन इट इज वाइटल फॉर ऑब्जर्वेशनल लर्निंग. वी स्टोर व्हाट वी हैव सीन द मॉडल इज डूइंग इन द फॉर्म ऑफ अ मेंटल इमेजेस, वर्बल डिस्क्रिप्शन. एक इमेज तैयार हो जाता है. इमेजरी विद अ डिस्क्रिप्शन इंक्रीजेस रिटेंशन प्रोसेस. रिप्रोडक्शन प्रोसेस, translating images and description into actual behavior. Reproduction is our ability to imitate. Our ability to imitate improves with practice, and practice of the learned behavior leads to improvement and skill advancement. Visualization, our ability to improve even when we just imagine ourselves performing. Okay, example, athletes imagine their performance in their mind's eye before performing.
Yeah, visualization.
Motivational process. For observational learning to occur, you have to be motivated to imitate the behavior that has been modeled. Reinforcement and punishment in motivation plays important role. When you see other person getting reward, you observe and get motivated to imitate. Reward and punishment theories believes it's the cause of learning, but Bandura said that they do not so much cause learning. Motivation, giving you a reason to imitate someone.
Yeah, why do we imitate someone? When we see a person doing that particular thing, to get motivation to act in that particular manner, right? So,
Past reinforcement.
And And similarly, negative motives, giving you reason not to imitate someone. इसका एक मैं वीडियो दिखाना चाहता हूँ. How it is. Show that video. फुल का वीडियो. How we learn by observing. Even animal, how they can learn. That's where people. यहाँ पर छोटा नैरो लेन है, तो थोड़ा ही रास्ता है. बुल वांट्स टू क्रॉस. This bull is trying to go and got it stuck. Now what is happening? I will आगे लेता हूँ. लोग उसको बहुत ये bull stuck हो गया है. People are trying and finally उसे निकाल रहा है. Now what happens with the other bull, you see? No. So what Bandura said, we will come back to that. Yes. So negative, giving you reason not to imitate someone. So past punishment. पास्ट जो किसी को पनिश किया है, किसी को जेल में डाला है, और तो then person will
पुढच्या स्टेज मागचा शहाणा.
हाँ, उसका स्टेज मागचा शहाणा. Promised punishment या threats, अगर ऐसा कुछ law break करोगे, any other, or vicarious punishment occurs when the tendency to engage in a behavior is weakened after having observed the negative consequences for other engaging in that particular behavior. Similarly, positive and negative, even positive, when somebody is getting reward, I am more likely to imitate that particular behavior.
In fact, in past reinforcement, अगर past reinforcement में मुझे कहीं पे achievement मिला है, okay, so like remembering that, probably I will be motivated to imitate the same thing again. Promise reinforcement, आगे जाके मुझे ये carrot मिलने वाला है, तो let me do that.
So this is by observing others. It's not only me, others. That's where you know. Yeah. So I think we will stop here because इसमें अभी काफी सारा है आगे. I will show you a small video clip and then we will stop here.